Hey everyone, this is Jason Hand, Cloud Advocate at Microsoft, and today I'm going to be recording myself as I step through the process of deploying a static website onto Azure Blob Storage. It's a pretty simple process. There's dozens of articles out there on how to do it. This one I think is just kind of following what I learned from my coworker Burke Holland's blog post that he put out a few weeks ago. And it turns out I had a couple of websites that I had deployed as app services, which is super simple. I love the process, but let's face it, it's overkill for a static website. So I'm in the process of kind of moving everything over to just static websites hosted in blob storage, which is the process I'm going to go through today. So anyway, I'm just kind of doing this without any instructions too much in front of me. And we'll see how long it takes and what the steps are. And if I can remember exactly what it is I need to do. But either way, we'll record it live and then put it out for everyone to see. So hopefully we'll all learn something. So right now I'm in my resource groups within Azure. And you can see I've got the app service in here as well as an app service plan. The first thing I'm going to need is a storage account, which is where the blob storage is going to be added or where the blob storage will exist. And so to do this, I'm going to click on Add New Resource. And then I'm sure I could scroll through here and find what I'm looking for, but I'm just going to type in account storage, I think is the... I always get these wrong. Storage account. You'd think account storage would also pull up storage account. Anyway, so I'm going to click create here. Seems obvious. And then this is the right subscription. I've got this on. I do want this storage account to exist within the same resource group so that everything's kind of together whenever I'm looking for it and working on it. And now I got to give it a name. That's kind of the naming convention I use. I know there's a lot of different opinions on sort of naming conventions and governance. Use what works best for you, is what I say. We're going to go with location US West. I think on the account storage, just the general purpose should work, and the read access geo-redundant storage should be fine as the default. You could step through each one of these and customize each of those, but I'm just going to stick with the defaults. So if I click review and create, it gives me a quick summary. If I like everything here, which everything seems fine, just click create. And now it's creating a storage account for me. And then once this is deployed, there'll be a couple things within that storage account that we'll go in and take a look at and use. In the meantime, while this is deploying, I want to switch over and show you how we're going to actually get the static HTML files into this new blob storage. There's a couple ways you can do it. One is using Azure File Explorer, which is kind of just like an FTP client, is the way it feels, is you can just drag a bunch of files or folders into your storage account, which works perfectly well. If you want to download the Azure File Explorer, I use it frequently on my Mac. But another way that's even easier, and if you're already spending a lot of time in Visual Studio Code, which I know a lot of people are these days, VS Code is awesome in that there's all these different plugins you can install. So if I go to VS Code, Visual Studio Code, I'm looking at my config file for the static website, but over here you can see all of the, I guess, files that were associated with this is a Hugo static website. And this public file, I've already built all of my static files and they all exist in this public file. So what I need to do is just, if I right click here, I can say deploy to static website. And I don't know, it might be too early. We'll have to just experiment with this and see what it shows us. There's our DevOps road trip storage. I say it might be too early. Yeah. Okay, so there's a few more steps I still got to do. But I just wanted to show you how easy it will be once we get to that step. Boy, do I want to do this like this. I'm going to hit cancel, and then that way I can just kind of come back and do it the sort of correct way, or the way that will hopefully make more sense to everyone. So the storage account is up and running, and there's a couple different services in here. We're ultimately going to be using this blob storage, but what you'll do is just come down to static website over here in the menu option. And then when you enable this, it asks you for a couple of document names. In most cases, your website, if you're using a static HTML website, it's probably index.html. Maybe it's something else. Whatever it is for your site, that's what you're going to want to put here. And then kind of the same thing for your 404 page. If you're calling it something else, if you're configuring your site for it to be something else, just put in that name. Now I'll hit save, and we can see it's given us a couple of endpoints. If I copy one of those endpoints and see what's in there, that's not that pleasant to look at. Let's take a look at the second one. Same thing. Okay, but that's fine. We haven't put any files in yet. Just wanted to show you what, or I guess out of curiosity, see what those links were pointing to. But this other thing's important right here in this $web. This is actually the container for our website. So if we click in, this is where ultimately all of the files will exist. So the index.html, the 404 page, the everything is in this. This is sort of the root folder. And you could, if you wanted to, one by one upload files, but you can't do multiple files at once. So you couldn't, and you can't, there's no way to like upload a compressed file, like a zip file or a tar file, and then uncompress it from the other end. So this is why either Azure's File Explorer or the VS Code method that I'll show you is really the best way to get your files up in there. If you're just uploading an index file, if you've only made a few changes to like one file, this is actually suitable to just upload single files every once in a while through this method. So I think now that we've got the static website enabled, I believe if we go back to VS Code, I'm hoping I can now do my right-click deploy. And why can't I see what I'm looking for? Oh, it's right at the very top. Duh. Recently used. Okay. And this looks promising. It's deploying 49 files. Shows me a percentage. Now, I have to say, there is a extension I'm using here. The Azure Storage extension is something you'll have to install, which if you're using VS Code, you know how like simple that is. So you'll need that extension. There's actually a bunch of Azure extensions that are becoming more and more useful to me as I sort of learn more about Azure. So take a look at those. I think there's a lot of really good ones in there. All right, it says it's done. It's given me a URL here, and if I browse to that website, hey, ta-da! I've got my DevOps road trip. It's missing some styling things, but for the most part, it is here, and it is on a real live public website. DevOps road trip storage, ZB Core, Windows.net. Okay, so, and that's our old one. We will eventually come back to that, but I might as well close that for now. And then I've also got my GoDaddy account up because I'll need to make some changes to the DNS eventually. Okay, the next step is if we go down to the custom domain, what I'm going to do here is, let me think about this, because I think the trick is that we actually need to create a CNAME first. And right now I have a CNAME because DevOpsRoadTrip.com was already being used. It was hosted on as an app service. So it's currently pointing to that app services URL. So I think what I need to do is grab this new URL where it actually this new static website is that I just created, and got to clean up the whole thing here. We don't need all this HTTPS stuff. And that's about as good as we can do for the time to live. So this could take anywhere from seconds to hours, but usually just a couple of minutes. So we'll wait for that just a little bit, try to be patient. But all I'm going to do here is, because I've got www.devopsroadtrip.com, I should be able to, this CNAME should resolve. So I should be able to put in, and this is where it's always a gamble. So let me put it in. It's got the green check mark, but sometimes I've found that if I'm just too impatient waiting for that CNAME to resolve and I hit save, hey, we might have done it. Okay, so we timed it pretty well there. Now the last piece definitely takes a long time, because currently if I were to go to www.devopsroadtrip.com and it tries to go to HTTPS, it sees that it's insecure, and that's because I don't have HTTPS set up. I don't have a secure certificate associated with this domain name. So all it can do is just HTTP, but it wants to automatically, for good reason, go to HTTPS. So in order to fix this, what we have to do is go into Azure CDN, and I need to create a new endpoint. So I'm going to say DevOps Road Trip CDN. I honestly don't know really technically what are the differences between any of these options for the available pricing. I haven't looked into it yet. I've just been going with the first option of standard Microsoft. And then here for the endpoint name, you can put in anything you want, as long as it doesn't already exist someplace. So I'm going to put in DevOps Road Trip.azure.net. And then this origin host name down here, I actually want to use this. I think this is what I did last time. Oops. And we hit create. Create our CDN endpoint. I don't recall how long this step takes. Okay, our endpoint is created. You can see DevOps roadtrip.azureedge.net is running for both HTTP and HTTPS protocols. So I believe this will still behave the same, because now we need to go back to our custom domain. Is this right? No, wait, not the custom domain. It is... I'm trying to recall where these certificates. Let's see. Okay, so here we can see our site is in here. And custom domain. Don't think so. Why is it not so obvious? Static website. Well, this is annoying. I swore it was super easy. Why is it not? I feel like it's... I should be seeing my endpoint here. I think, yeah, one other thing I need to do is... It's not real clear why I'm not seeing my original endpoint in here. All right. Whatevs. Anyway, that's where this is where we need to go. This is what I was looking for, and I couldn't get there because it wasn't showing. All right, so now that we're in here, we got to do custom endpoint or custom domain again. And so long as that map's all right, I'm going to copy this just to be... that doesn't look good. I'm going to just, to make sure it's all pointing to the right place. Oops. Let's just... whoa. Also, it helps if I come in and actually turn that on. Now, this part is going to take a while, like probably an overnight thing. So everything you've seen up until now, clearly the site is running, and the only thing that's missing is getting it pointed to the right thing. So I have to turn this on, and what it's going to do is ask me essentially if I'm providing my own certificate or if I want Azure to do it. I'm going to stick with CDN managed, just so I don't have to mess with it. It's super easy, easier to do it that way. Certificates are a pain in the butt. But yeah, so this is going to take some time. This has been about 22 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. But yeah, you can see it's got to go through this whole process of submitting a request, validating the domain, which is just a matter of pinging GoDaddy, essentially, just the DNS records. The part that takes the most actually is the certificate provisioning. I did one of these last night and started at around 11 or maybe 10:30, but by 11 or so, it hadn't done anything beyond the domain validation. So I went ahead and went to bed, and it was complete this morning. I'm not going to let this video run that long. So if something changes and this doesn't come through, then I'll create another video to sort through that. But otherwise, you can assume that once this certificate process goes through, then the HTTPS will be enabled. And when you type in www.devopsroadtrip.com, it will go to the right place. Fingers crossed. All right, that's all I got. Hopefully this has been helpful for some of y'all. And if you've got any questions about anything, hit me up at JasonHand on Twitter. And yeah, talk to you later. Bye.